Go mágad agus ceann fáilte rátan seo agus toméid éis an ceis seo ardú leat agus le airí eile iadachas rát agus le déanaí leis an ara Madigan. Minister, my specific part of this is in relation to Skull Column, and I know that you have visited, as has Minister Eamon Ryan as well, and other members of this House and the other House, to see for yourselves the site that's there, an empty school building in an educational campus in the heart of Dublin 12, near HSC facilities, and now I think the HSC is about to put a disability service right next door to this as well. So it's ideal in every single way, and it also would help address a major need that has been identified by your department, by obviously the parents who are crying out for somewhere central when they're dropping off one child and another child then has to be put back into the car and moved to another location if they're lucky enough to find a place for their child who has the additional needs. So there is, as I said, an urgent need. I think this site, in comparison, and there's very little sites available in Dublin, kind of when you start looking at it, is an educational place, as an old school, but it also has gardens, playing fields, yards and all already in situ. Yes, it might cost some money to fit it out, because you are talking about an ASD-specific school rather than just a unit. And I know that there has been discussions with the department, and if you can fill us in on where they have gone, because they have been liaison with various school patrons and the like, if you can give me a rundown on that.
Minister, thank you for being here this afternoon, or this evening, or tonight even, to take this topical issue. Minister, you'll be aware, I'm sure, of the burden that's falling on principals, generally speaking, at the minute, and the additional pressures that COVID has put on principals right across the board, primary, post-primary, special schools, whatever. Now consider, for those principals who are managing everything connected to COVID, managing everything connected to the ordinary running of a school, managing the running of ASD units, and also teaching a class, or perhaps teaching more than one class. There are 83 teaching principals in schools where there are special classes in mainstream schools at this time. Of these schools, 21 of them have two or more special classes. And I think that those principals who didn't have to take that on, all the additional work in relation to it, but have taken the decision that their community needed these units, and that they wanted to serve them, and that the community needs that. And I think they deserve commendation for that. But the fact is that they're under inordinate pressure. Principals generally are, but these principals in particular are, and consequently that has implications for their schools. I spoke to one teaching principal in a mainstream school just outside Mallow in Cork. So they have two special classes, and they communicated to me how demanding the role of a teaching principal is generally, while also managing these classes. On paper, in the department, this looks like a 4-teacher school, but the reality is that this principal manages a team of the 4 teachers, 18 staff members, including 2 special educational teachers, 2 ASD class teachers, 6 SNAs, as well as whatever you have in terms of bus escorts. So there's a fair bit of work in that, on top of managing your curriculum, on top of managing the school, ensuring it all works. So this has all got even more difficult. The children, I believe, who missed out most during the lockdown were those children with special needs. The burden on these schools is enormous. I think we need to do something about this. I think that we need to relieve the pressure on these teaching principals.
Minister Foley, you're very welcome.
I would like to thank both deputies for raising these issues, as it does give me an opportunity to outline the current position regarding provision for children with special educational needs and the supports in place for schools with special classes. Enabling children with special educational needs, including autism, to receive an education appropriate to their needs is a priority for Government. Next year, over 20% of the total educational budget, or €2 billion, will be invested in supporting children with special needs. As a result, the numbers of special education teachers, special needs assistants and special class and school places are at unprecedented levels. Special class provision in mainstream primary and post-primary school is a central element of the continuum of education provision in place to support children with special education needs. This continuum extends from full-time placement in mainstream classes and special classes through to full-time enrolment in special schools, with a number of options in between. The Department supports this continuum through a range of dedicated supports in line with the needs of the child. These supports include the provision of teachers, special needs assistance and psychological support from the National Psychological Service. In addition, there are specialist supports provided by the National Council for Special Education, including extensive professional development programmes for principals and teachers and advice for schools, parents and families. The overall aim of the continuum is to ensure that every child is supported in the journey of realising their potential through education in an inclusive and caring school environment. I am keenly aware of the huge contribution made by all principals, including teaching principals, in supporting this continuum. I wish to acknowledge the work of school leaders who open special classes in response to the needs of their community. I am aware too that COVID-19, as you've outlined, Deputy, has placed an additional strain on principals and indeed on our schools. Apart from the supports I outlined earlier, there are a number of other supports provided by the Department. As part of the additional funding to schools, £10.2 million has been allocated specifically to support principals and deputy principals who undertake teaching duties in primary schools. This funding will provide each teaching principal with a minimum of 1 release day per week and release days for deputy principals in those schools that have an existing administrative principal for this school year. More than 1,700 primary schools with teaching principals have benefited from the increase in these release days. Teaching principals in schools with special classes are allocated a further 4 release days, in addition to the 37 allocated to each school with a teaching principal. There are also arrangements in place for schools to cluster their principal release days into a full-time post, which will assist teaching principals to more effectively plan their release days for the benefit of the school. Notwithstanding the extent of this investment and the supports which have been put in place, I am also very conscious that there are some parts of the country, including Dublin 12, where increases in population and other issues have led to concerns regarding a shortage of school places. The NCSE has responsibility for coordinating and advising on the education provision for children nationwide. NCSE is planning a further expansion of special classes and special school places nationally to meet identified needs. The process is ongoing. It is open to any school to make an application to the NCSE for the establishment of a specialised provision, and where sanctioned, a range of supports, including capital funding, is made available to the school. As Minister, I have powers under Section 37A of the Education Act to direct a school to provide additional places, but this power is only used as a last resort where all reasonable efforts have failed. Through better planning at both national and local level, it is my objective that specialist education places should come on stream to meet emerging demand on a timely basis. However, the active collaboration of school communities is essential in this regard. The legislation was used for the first time in 2019 in respect of the Dublin 15 area. Significant progress has been made in that area on foot of action taken under Section 37. The legislative process is again underway this year in respect of South Dublin. While progress is being made, the NCSE is continuing its engagement with schools, patron bodies, parents and others to bring the required additional special class and special school placements on stream. In terms of the provision of additional special school places in the area, I can confirm that sites such as Schullcolumn are currently being examined. The work will continue until every child has access to a suitable education. In the meantime, CNOs are available to support both families and schools who need help, advice or support.
Minister Deputy Ó Snodaigh, a minute.
Aengus has made a dúirt tún sin. It's true, and nach raibh Scanley's far on. It's a pity that there doesn't seem to be any progress. Otherwise, you would have taken the opportunity to announce some progress, or at least fill us in on some progress. Because all basically you had to say in relation to Schullcolumn is that it is being examined, and I was told that in May, and I was told it last, I think it was last March as well, and I was told it in October. I'm not expecting a miracle overnight, but kind of has the examination gone beyond walking around the building? Has it looked at all of the numbers in relation to children who will need such a school? And I note that you said that the National Council for Special Education has responsibility for coordinating it, but you are the minister, you're the one who has to dictate policy. And in this area, there is a crying need for such a school in the Dublin 12 area. So hopefully the next time I ask, you'll have better response.
Like Minister, I suppose, look, I appreciate all of what you're saying, but I was hoping that there might be something more positive in it, and maybe in your response now, maybe you can give some indication of that. And I bring this forward in a spirit of, you know, trying to see if we can get a solution to this. It's not a huge cohort of schools, but for those, like, I mean, where an issue arises in a unit, or whether an issue arises in terms of the significant amount of staff really that are dependent on the principal, it's usually then the mainstream class that the principal is teaching that they lose out on account of this, and the whole school loses out, and they're doing extraordinary work. But you can't continue to do the miracle of the loaves of fishes with the limited amount of hours that you have and all the different responsibilities you have. The group of teaching principals that I have been engaging with, they've put forward proposals. The sums we're talking about are very small here, 3 or 4 million, to resolve this, to make them administrative principals. So, Minister, will you commit to ensuring, or at least at the very least explore, whether principals who are teaching in small schools, whether they can be made administrative principals? I think it's a reasonable ask. Or Minister, will you meet with the group of principals in question?
Minister, please.
Again, I would like to thank both deputies for raising these issues and for giving me the opportunity to reassure the House that my department is committed to ensuring that all children can access an education suitable to their needs. I'm very conscious, Deputy O'Leary, of the points that you raise. I believe we have gone some step forward in this most recent budget, and in particular in relation to measures that we put in place as a consequence of COVID-19. I absolutely do appreciate there's a job of work still remaining, but I am very conscious of it, and I would say that unequivocally to you. The Department will continue to support principals and schools through the provision of the necessary funding and capital investment to ensure all children are successful in accessing an education. 2 billion, as I've said earlier, or 20% of the total education budget next year will be spent on making additional provision for children with special education needs, and I think that is to be welcomed, but that is also richly deserved. It does in fact mean that the numbers of special education teachers, special needs assistants and special class and school places have increased significantly. And it will enable children with special education needs to continue to be a priority for this government going forward. And in particular, I suppose, in relation to Column, Deputy, you would be aware that I am very familiar with that particular case. I have engaged with representatives in relation to that particular case, and I will progress that case as quickly and expedite it as quickly as we can. Thank you.